How do you decide who's right and who's wrong in the health field? This is kind of an important question to ask because there's a lot of different health influencers. There's a lot of different health advice. So, how do you decide who's right and who's wrong in the health field? It's really hard to tell sometimes, right? So, you got to keep in mind, some key deciding factors, right, before you take any advice in the health field, because there's a lot of advice out there. Some people say coffee is really good for you, that it's one of the best supplements that you can take, caffeine, right? Some people say coffee is a superfood, right? Now, there's a lot of studies and there's a lot of people out there that don't drink caffeine at all, that don't drink coffee at all. And they have all these studies that say coffee is like, all this stuff about energy and it's not as good for you as some people claim. So you got half the health field that think it's good for you and the other half of the health field that doesn't think it's good for you. So how do you decide who's right and who's wrong? Because believe it or not, this doesn't happen with coffee. This happens with red meat. Half the health field thinks it's healthy for you. The other half doesn't. Half the health field thinks that saturated fat is healthier than polyunsaturated fat. The other half of the health field thinks that, polyunsaturated fat is heart healthy and better than saturated fat. How do you decide who's right and who's wrong? I have my own opinions on things, right? I think saturated fat is way healthier than polyunsaturated fat. And I think polyunsaturated fat is hard on the metabolism. I like coffee. I drink coffee every day. I think it's a really great way to start. I like raw honey and royal jelly a lot. I think it's a great way to start. And I eat starch, right? I think if you feel the urge, you feel the urge, and I feel the urge to eat starch. So, how do you decide who's right and who's wrong? The best way to go about it is to literally just experiment. I drink coffee. I feel better with it. I feel like I have more energy with it. I actually feel good. You know what I mean? I cook my food in saturated fat, like coconut oil or butter. I feel good. I feel better doing it, rather than when I use other oils that don't have as much saturated fat. Some guys will send me studies or they'll post studies and say, oh my gosh, this stuff is not that great for you. Brother, I like the stuff and I experiment with things. That's how I find out whether it's good for me. I experiment with it. I ask myself, do I feel better with this said thing in my life? Do I feel better with this health product in my life? Does it generally improve my mood and well-being? If the answer to that question is yes, then I'm going to keep it, right? There are some guys that'll say, they'll post studies and they'll like, okay, guys who eat more meat, they have less lifespans and they don't live as long, right? So then they use it as an argument that people shouldn't eat more meat. Me, I say, these studies on health span, they're actually pretty complicated, and there's actually so many factors that go into your lifespan. There's genetics. Some people have the genetics to live until they're 90 or 100. Some people don't. Some people have the genetics to live till like they're 60. That's a real thing. Some people live in like a super toxic city that's a really unhealthy environment, right? Some people live in the mountainous villages where your health is pretty good. That makes a major difference in your lifespan. So people are trying to find these studies and they're trying to pinpoint, they're trying to find the secret to aging, the secret to great health, the fountain of youth. When in reality, it's all just a lot more complicated and the answer isn't as simple as most people think. There's that, and sometimes you'll just meet guys that'll read studies, but they don't do the experiments. It's really important that you do the experiments for yourself, right? You can read 1,000 studies every day. If you don't do the experiments, if you don't test things out for yourself on how you feel with it, it's really hard to tell if that thing's going to make you feel healthier, right? And the difference between that is like, think of a guy who who buys new tools to something, right? And the guy sits at home reading the instruction booklet on how to do it. And he spends all day trying to read the instruction booklet, right? And versus the guy who decides to try something new and he says, I'll figure it out, right? Keep that in mind. You know, there's two types of soccer players, right? There's the soccer player who watches YouTube videos all day on the right technique and how to do things. And then there's the guy that spends 5 hours at the field and he's like, I'll just figure it out. Who do you think becomes a better soccer player? It's the guy that really goes for the experiments. It's the guy that really goes for the experience. And sometimes that's what you need to figure things out. The experiments and the experience, right? That is something that's really going to help you in the health field figure things out for yourself. Because there's so many conflicting information in the health field that naturally any guy that's trying to improve their health, they're going to be like, what's right and what's wrong? There's so many conflicting information, right? And naturally, the way that it's healthy for someone to figure that out is to experiment with things yourself and say, does this health product, does this diet make me feel better about myself, improve my mood and well-being, and improve my energy? If the answer to those questions is yes, then I think you can confidently say it's a good thing in your life.